release of the new movie, Barbie has invaded every corner of the internet, and my brain isn't much different. I love to make detailed builds based off of current pop culture, so it wasn't a surprise when a few weeks ago, I decided to make a Barbie dream house. The catch is, I only had a week to do the actual build, and I wasn't about to cut corners either. I decided that I would be using Chisel and Bits, a Minecraft mod that lets you build insanely small, so that I can make this as detailed as possible. I even went so far to contact Barbie Dreamhouse expert and co-editor of this book, Whitney to have a discussion on the final product. So let's get started. I was feeling rather ambitious on day one, so I went ahead and asked my Twitter followers which Barbie dream house they remembered the best. The common answer seemed to be the Barbie townhouse that was released between 2008 and 2010, with a few variations in color and background detail. However, they all had the same 3-story layout, elevator, and furniture. This particular line of dream houses doesn't give much clue to what the exterior might look like, so I was for the most part on my own. While these are labeled as townhouses, I was looking to build this as an individual house, and so for the outside, I took inspiration from the 2015 Barbie Life in the Dreamhouse series. I created a mock-up in The Sims because I wanted to get a general idea of how to turn that floor layout into a full building. And then it was time to get started in Minecraft. Given that this was in Malibu, I wanted a nice coastal area to build the home, so I made some slightly scuffed landscape. I honestly wish I had spent more time on this because I think having a decent background is important. However, given my time restraints, I wasn't eager to spend hours on something that wasn't even the subject. Finally, I started to make the initial shape of the home. Minecraft has its own grid, and while I could theoretically work outside that grid with Chisel and Bits, I found that in some way conforming to the grid creates unity, and in some cases it actually helps with lag, which anyone who has built with Chisel and Bits knows that this mod is full of lag. Once I had created the general shape of the house in Minecraft, it was time to get started on those architectural details. Even though the dollhouse doesn't have a front to it, I wanted to incorporate some of the architectural details from the dollhouse into the full build. For example, the columns. These play a fundamental role in the 2009 dollhouse, but also in Barbie's Life in a Dreamhouse home. These columns are somewhere between Doric, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, and Tuscan. While the show came out in 2012, the Tuscan style was really popular in the late 2000s, around the time that this dollhouse came out. Supporting this trend in the house is the arched windows and door frames you'll see me making. To be fair, I made some rectangular windows that I don't 100% feel like fit the vibe, but it's easy to fall into the habit of making angular things in Minecraft. You'll also notice that I'm playing around with the color palette a bit in this. With these dollhouses, it kind of ranges from like a pastel pink to like a 80s hyper pop, like incredibly vibrant palette. I wasn't sure if I wanted to go pastel or more saturated. I ended up choosing pastel because that's what it looked like the house sort of was in the Barbie Life in a Dreamhouse series. Now, moving on, I want to talk about that fence. The swirly fence is so familiar to me because the pattern dominated Barbie structures for about a decade. I took a look back into the history of Barbie dream houses to sort of place where it started, and while there was some swirling in the 90s, it did really start in the late 2000s. I personally remember seeing this in a lot of Barbie microstructures. They would use the swirls to like have things clip into the house itself. I don't know if that was just me, but this line of Barbie houses had a flat roof, but I don't know why, I just thought that was kind of boring. So initially I tried to make this like modern slanted roof, and I don't know, it just didn't work out. So I opted for a roof style that is seen a few years down the line in model. Now you'll notice that there is this pink cobblestone, and I wanted to incorporate this into my build because it seems to be a classic in the Barbie style. I did look at the set for the Greta Gerwig movie, and I noticed it there, but also in past citations of the dollhouse. To make it though, I literally retextured normal cobblestone in Minecraft. After fiddling with the roof, I was pretty much done with working on the exterior of the house for that day, so I started making Barbie's pool. This particular dollhouse doesn't actually have a pool and has a hot tub instead, but I felt like it was too classic not to include. However, Barbie seems to really like her organic, kidney-shaped pools, so that is what I set out to make. Unfortunately, you could not water and log Chisel and Bits at this time, and I was building in 1.12.2, so I couldn't even waterlog slabs. So I made the inside of the pool a bit chunky, and I will end up changing this later. I finished off the day by doing some landscaping around the house, and by this point, I had already worked for about 12 hours. Some of you might have seen my TikTok or Twitter post about this, but it was a very long day. But getting most of the exterior done in a single day set me up for success for the entire week. Alright, so here's the thing. I love interior builds. I think if I could just build an IKEA, I would. And I might do that someday for fun, but building a Barbie house from the late 2000s was actually a nightmare. The choice I made not to make the dollhouse bit by bit meant that I had to expand upon the design concept of the home. This meant making a kitchenette a kitchen, or turning a sticker that's background art into a full room. I had some optimism when I started the kitchen, but soon enough, I realized that building this how I wanted was going to be hard, and that naturally some things wouldn't be the scale that I wanted. For example, this fridge is nearly 3 Minecraft blocks tall, and while that's like fine and it looks fine, that's nearly 9 feet. 3 feet taller than a traditional fridge. On a random tangent, while building this kitchen, I had this amazing revelation because I was like, wow, why do most kitchens have a window in front of the sink? And I actually ended up asking people about it because it seemed like a collective thing across different places. And here's some of the answers that I got. 1, natural lighting for doing the dishes. 2, and this one's the one that makes most sense, but most plumbing is on walls that face the exterior of the house, so it just is kind of a natural thing for most sinks to be near an exterior wall and therefore a window. Another one I got was that so that people can like look outside while doing the dishes and like watch their kids, which I think... Anyways, either way, I thought it was interesting. The kitchen took a day by itself because I was rather busy and didn't have much time to build. But it was a good exercise because for the first time I was using very vibrant colors, as opposed to more muted or gray tones. I started the dining room on stream, which if you don't know, I stream art and Minecraft on Twitch. For the floor, I actually ended up taking the texture of Minecraft wood and using the same color palette that I used in the kitchen flooring to make the iconic pink floor planks. This room was a bit more complicated because I just didn't give it a solid wall color. This room had wainscoting paneling and this striped pink bow wallpaper that took an hour alone to implement into the room. And once again, I was stuck with only a few pieces of defined furniture. At first, I made this one table that was more rectangular and I tried to add some wall decor by making the Barbie head logo, but for some reason this just wasn't clicking for me like the kitchen was. The room composition just felt off. It didn't feel Barbie to me, and it felt empty, so I took a break. When I came back a few hours later, I decided that the table was indeed the culprit as to why I didn't like this room. I opted for a round table, which I wish I would have just done in the first place because that was what was in the reference. But I digress. As soon as I added the round table, the flow returned. I made smaller details like cutlery, plates, and a candlestick, and I moved the Barbie logo to the other side of the wall and framed it. I made a hutch cabinet for some of Barbie's fancy dishes, and filled the corners with plants and a bench. And suddenly, the room felt very complete. I didn't mention this before, but every single light fixture in this home I made from scratch, and then using the mod Simple Lights, I was able to give it the effect of glowing. So the dining room was done, and I was once again feeling pretty great. It was the weekend though, so I shut off my world and called it a day. So this was the first time I was making a room that didn't actually exist in the dollhouse. This room is based off of the supposed living room that you see in the background of the dining room. To start, I continued the paneling from the dining room but opted for a simpler wall. Then I created the couches you saw in the back, along with the pillows, but this is where once again I was stuck. This wasn't a living room because that was on the second floor and I had already added all the information I had. So I went off script and added a bookcase. Looking back, I wish I didn't because built-in bookshelves will be featured in another room later on, and on top of that, I got very burnt out building all the books for this. However, simultaneously, I was pleased because it made the room look like it had a sense of purpose. A saloon or parlor, I'm not sure if these are still in fashion, but usually it's just a more formal living room that doesn't usually have a TV and is located close to the entrance of the house to entertain guests. This to me made sense, and once again the flow of ideas continued. I added tables and a fancy lamp, and before I called this room done, I shifted the windows to create symmetry and more balance in the room. For a room that didn't actually exist in the dollhouse, I won't lie, I was pretty proud of this. Once I had completed that, I moved on to build the elevator, which is a feature that is included in many Barbie dream houses. The first Barbie dream house to feature an elevator was actually the townhouse, I think, in 1970. This elevator also incorporated a swirly pattern, which made it quick and easy to make. Because it's made of chisel and bits, it actually doesn't work, but if I could make it work, I would, trust me. With all of this done, I had completed the first floor of my Barbie dream house, which felt amazing. Except it was day 4, meaning I was halfway through the project and still had 2 other floors to go. I wanted to get started on the next floor immediately, but I had other responsibilities I had to get done and I just couldn't. The entire time I was working on this project, I had a continuous choice between one dollhouse design or another from the 2008 to 2010 line. For the most part, there wasn't a big difference between them, but the living room in this one and this one are very different. Considering this was supposed to be a challenge, I decided to go with the more complicated living room, which meant a fireplace, built-in bookshelves, and paneling. I started off by creating a blue variation of the planks I made downstairs and replacing the entire floor. Next, I grabbed a fireplace that I had built for a Christmas chisel and bit project and retextured it to fit the aesthetic. Then, I started on the bookcases and paneling that framed the wall. I kept moving around the bookcase and readjusted here and there, but no matter what I did, something felt out of place or something felt disproportionate. So I took a break and attempted to create the purple sofa you see in the dollhouse. And again, while it didn't look bad, it didn't feel right. I tried to make some armchairs to balance it and see if that would solve the issue, but again, it just didn't look right. And I won't lie, my morale and motivation was pretty low at this point, and I was regretting choosing the more complicated living room. The best advice I've ever received for creative things like this, I actually received from an Animal Crossing video about island aesthetics. And it was that if you feel like your project halfway through it isn't working or the aesthetic isn't aestheticing, the best thing you can do is go back and just delete a whole part that you're trying to integrate. How this applies to my Barbie build? Well, I redid the entire fireplace, and actually I loved it. And after how good that felt, I decided I would rebuild almost everything I'd done so far. For the chairs, I decided to make them diagonal. The reasoning behind this being that it would have some dynamic positioning in the room and draw the attention to the center of the living room. Building in diagonals with chisel and bits can be tedious, but more often than not, it ends up being worth it because you are breaking the Minecraft grid and therefore creating a focus point. Next, I started on the sofa. Freehanding fancy furniture in Minecraft is hard. The thing is, it's often detailed, and while chisel and bits allows me to get very detailed in Minecraft, it still doesn't compare to the details and shapes we expect from this type of furniture in real life. This is why I use color and value to add the illusion of dimension in these chisel and bit builds in order to add shape without making it robust or like really low poly style. Once I added these furniture pieces to the room, I knew I was in business, and just like that, all of my motivation came right back. I added the rug that was in the dollhouse itself, and for the tables, I took a table that I had built before and modified it to have a round top like in the dollhouse. From here, I made side tables and a coffee table. Unlike the other rooms in the dollhouse, I could clearly see specific background details, which was nice because I wasn't making stuff up and I had a clear direction of where to go, especially with the contents of this shelf. Next, I created the polka dot lamp in the background of the room, and I won't lie, this felt very out of place. I was 5 in 2008, so I wasn't very attentive to the interior decor that was going on, but I don't know, maybe something like this was common, but I just don't like it. After more or less creating everything from the reference, I was back to making stuff up. I added some wall decor, I added a fancy piano. I basically assumed that the wall panel was mirroring somewhat on the other side and framed the door to the balcony. I created one light, but upon closer inspection of the dollhouse, I noticed the swirly Barbie chandelier and I was like, yo, I gotta make that. I never had any of these specific dollhouses, but I had friends that had them. I had like one Barbie beach mini structure, and I swear it had this chandelier in hot pink. It matched the swirly fences, and it was just too iconic to leave out. Once I had added the lighting, I was officially done with the living room, and the next room on this floor was the bathroom. To keep the same continuity I had in the downstairs, I took the tiles from the kitchen and recolored them to that second floor teal. I decided to go with the bluer variation of this room because at this point I was getting a little bit tired of the pink. I know. I created the wall paneling, and the first thing I wanted to do in this room was make the shower. I was thinking about the main selling points of this dollhouse when I was a kid. I think it was the elevator, but also the fact that you could like put batteries in the shower and I think it would like sing? That might have been one of the later ones, but I swear this one had that. Also, in Barbie fashion, the shower is ungodly tall, and that's just how it is. For Barbie's bathroom, this wasn't full as much splendor as I expected. It really was just a normal toilet, pedestal sink, and yeah, that was it. I did add a hanging plant because I saw that in one of the backdrops, but hey, maybe it's okay that Barbie has a lame bathroom. It could be much worse, like beach themed. After having done an entire floor, I was feeling pretty good, so I called it a day. I was pretty optimistic because I had a single room to do and 2 days to do it. The first thing I noticed was that I was lacking a specific porthole window and was like, yeah, I could make this, so I spent a decent amount of time making this very round window. Next, it was time to work on the usual, the floors and the walls. I went with some purple planks for the floors, and for the walls, I wanted to attempt to make this wallpaper Barbie had in her bedroom. To do this, I had to make a seamless pattern, meaning that if I placed it next to another part, it would line up and continue, and well, you get it. I fiddled with it until I got something that closely resembled the wallpaper, and I got to work papering the entire room. When I chose to do a dollhouse from 2008 to 2010, I kind of accepted that not everything I built was going to be entirely aesthetic. It was sort of the downfall of doing something like this, because obviously everything in this house is optimized to the trends of the late 2000s and not the early 2020s. Basically, what I'm saying is, man, I really dislike this wallpaper. I went outside to build the bed as I do with my other furniture because it gives me more space to work. I will say, out of all of the furniture I made for this project, the bed wasn't the worst, but it wasn't the best. Despite it being a canopy bed, which I think was the coolest thing you could have had in 2010, it didn't feel as grand as I expected Barbie to have for a bed. When I was a kid, I remember my mom got a box of chocolates for Valentine's Day, and it had like this nice plush silky top that I later just stole and thought it was super cool, and that my Barbies had a red heart-shaped bed, and now I'm realizing how totally suggestive that looked. Once the bed was done, I placed it in the room and immediately was like, I don't know what it was. I'm pretty sure it was the wallpaper, but man, I just didn't like this. Especially in comparison to all the other rooms I had done. I don't know, this one, it did not feel right. I thought my best bet might be to take a break and work on something else. So I decided I would redo the pool to only be chisel and bits and use glass for the water instead. But this break didn't work. When I came back to the build, I was still working on it and I just felt like I was on autopilot, and I was just disappointed because it just didn't feel remotely like my best work. So I decided to end to day 6 early. Recently, while I was working on this project, I had some friends come and stay with me, and we watched a Studio Ghibli film called Kiki's Delivery Service. If you've never seen this movie, I highly recommend watching it. Basically, it deals with themes of artistic burnout. I've seen this movie probably over a dozen times, but seeing it at a low part of this project, it just kind of hit. The point made to Kiki in this movie is that aside from taking breaks, it's important to evaluate your motivations and to find inspiration. I wouldn't say this project burned me out, but I think the anticipation of getting it done made it take longer to do. And I won't lie, going a little bit off script here, I wasn't sure what my motivation for this project was. The thing is, it's really easy to get caught up in like YouTube building and, oh, I want to build something that's going to, perform well. But this project also really held a special place to me because of the special place that Barbie held to me. And thinking about all those times that I played in the dollhouse like this when I was younger, that was my motivation. When I logged on the last day, I knew I was going to complete this build today. It occurred to me that just like the living room, I could start over the bedroom to gain more motivation, but something told me that wouldn't help this time, and I just had to do it. It might not be the best room in this house, or the most impressive, but that's okay. I ended up adding lower paneling to break up the monotony of the wallpaper, and using my own creative devices to create more of a scenic room. I added a vanity and a divider near the closet, and it started to bring it some purpose. I actually reached a point in this room where I thought, well, this may not look like a Barbie bedroom with an infinite closet, it definitely looks like a room in a dollhouse. And I decided that that was what I was going for. The last piece of furniture I had to do was the hot tub, which was actually fairly simple in terms of creation. Like the pool, I decided not to fill it with water, but instead glass because it allowed me to create this really cool bubbling effect. With the hot tub complete, I had managed to finish the dollhouse in 7 days. It was huge. Before I show the full thing, I'm sure some of you are wondering whether or not there will be a download, and the answer is yes. My Patreons will have early access to it, but I will make it completely public if we reach 20k likes on this video. I know, YouTuber moment, but I did indeed spend 28 hours on this alone. For my discussion with Whitney, I'll be showing her individual rooms and then we'll commentate on it a bit. This is definitely abridged, so I'll be posting the full version on my Patreon as well. So first things first, obviously this is in Minecraft. I'm not sure how familiar you are with said game, but I specifically use a modified version that allows me to build like ridiculously small, which is how I kind of incorporate all these different details. As I said to you, I used the 2008 to 2010 sort of area.
Even though you're doing the 2008 2010, there's some things that are already there in the 1990 house, because I think they, they're
Yes.
different eras of the dream house and they build on each other, so they'll kind of have a phase where they're doing some things for a bit and then they change it up. So I feel like the 1990 house had the kind of Greco-Roman columns, sort of like how yours has, and this kind of McMansion thing, the Palladian window shape. So like it's super interesting to me that these details were like consistent for a little while. The 1990 house, so you can
Oh my
definitely
gosh.
there's some definitely parallels.
Yes. This is our lovely kitchen. I was watching your video where I believe it was you that talked about how in the first Barbie dream house there wasn't even a kitchen at all.
No kitchen. So that was like, I think that was a big signal, think of the 1960s. They were trying to really say she's not a housewife. And I think that, yeah, you're right. I think like the kitchen has been relatively quiet in a lot of the homes even since then. Like they've incorporated it, but like the 2022 house, there's more like kind of like fun aspects of the kitchen, which maybe also tracks with culturally, like now cooking's a hobby, like it's less like a chore.
Felt like even like dining spaces were pretty, I don't want to say like limited, but like I felt like just like the kitchen, like they were just not given as much detail unless they were for entertainment purposes, because again, it was more so like that domestic aspect. Barbie just like wasn't something that they pushed very heavily. I actually had a super hard time building this room because in the dollhouse itself from 2009, there's literally only the table and the chairs, and that's it.
Just for reference, here's the dining for the 1990 house.
And see, that has like the same thing where they did like the half paneling and then the wallpaper, which is interesting. So this room over here, I constructed this room from all of the details I could see in the background on the sticker, just again, give this house some more dimension.
I'm going to show an example of the 2000, which has similar, where it looks like you can see the kind of way the sticker.
Yes.
There's like the sticker of what's on the windowsill and stuff.
And again, it's interesting to me because Barbie, even though like we move into these more like modern eras, she definitely keeps like a lot of traditional aspects in like the decor for furniture, and like for example having a parlor.
Yeah, the books too, like for the 2000 house, when you're thinking like the turn of the millennium, like I guess when I was like looking through the different houses, I was thinking like, oh, it's gonna have like inflatable furniture, it's gonna have like a little laptop, but instead they went backwards and almost more like, here's like a chaise lounge with like a little book.
This is the living room. A lot of this like background paneling was done in the sticker section of like the background of the house. And I thought it was really interesting because like one of the main points of both of these houses was like this very detailed sort of like vintage like sofa / couch.
Yeah.
This reminds me of that chaise lounge that you just showed me where like they went backwards instead of
like fin de siècle. Yeah, like
yeah.
It's like aggressively like old-timey.
This is my very specific Barbie era, which is like 2005 to 2000, I want to say like 17, where they had swirls in like every aspect of furniture.
Yeah, like makes me think of this. There's this term called like an arabesque. Like, actually, do you know like Edgar Allan Poe has a book called like grotesques and arabesques, but they're like these like swirls, which are they're like kind of like almost like a flower, almost like a heart, but not quite. Like they're kind of like in this realm between abstract and representational. I really like that. Like, I think that type of lattice, like, there's been different times that it's like in the late 20th century and 21st century that it's been brought back, but I think it goes back to like Art Nouveau.
Yes.
And we think of like movie Moulin Rouge, like that kind of era, and I can see how like it's like a romantic thing to have little swirls and hearts and things. It's
because yes, and also of course all of the movies in the 2000s were very princess orientated. Yeah, I definitely think that probably influenced the more like romantic style. So the bathroom's very small, so you'll have to excuse that, but it's very hard to get in here. But I remember very specifically from the commercial of this one, there was like 3 big hype things about this dollhouse, and it was the fact that you could put your phone in the little TV. It was the elevator, and the fact that I'm pretty sure that the shower sang, and it was like a huge deal because it was like the start of like the Barbie like smart houses.
Yeah, well the 1991 had batteries, and it had a few things that lit up, or like the fireplace crackled.
Oh my gosh.
And so they branded that by saying Magical Mansion.
I love that actually.
Then the 2021 house, I'll show a picture. It has has all these things like a light up disco ball, these interactive elements, but it has a now that we're in the bathroom, I'll bring up that it has the toilet flushes. That's one of, which I think is interesting culturally, because I feel like they like a lot of the early houses, in addition to not having a kitchen, didn't have a bathroom.
Yes,
Like,
yes.
it's very waspy, right? Like, let's pretend that doesn't happen.
Yeah, like girls literally don't poop. Like,
and now I'm thinking about the new movie and the fact that like she doesn't, right? Like she doesn't drink water. Like, it's like an empty glass, so it's like a body without liquid. So we know, when I was talking to some of the global head of design, Kim Coleman, when they do research, they do market research to see like how the kids play with them and what they're interested in and what not. I mean, it makes obvious sense that they're at the age where they're like toilet training, or that's in a recent like huge transition in their life.
Yeah.
Like 5 years old, like that's a big deal. Like toilet training is like a huge milestone for you. So they do want to play. They want to play with a toilet. Like that's a big part of. So it makes sense they like leaned into that with the sound effect.
For me, this whole room was interesting for me, I think, because the wallpaper goes back to that sort of like, I want to say almost like 1920s vibe, where they had the, I don't know what the pattern is specifically called. Her bedroom was very much so giving like princess vibes to me. And I was thinking too, specifically about the bed, definitely like a little bit more older, like we discussed. Thinking to myself, I was like, wow, this is like not as like grand as I remember it being. But then I remembered like when I was younger, all any like femme person wanted was a canopy bed.
Absolutely.
See that they
arrow to suggest a single bed always?
Yes, to suggest a single bed, because Barbie sleeps by herself.
It doesn't stay over.
After this room, Whitney and I said our goodbyes. I'll be linking her socials and stuff down below. She's an excellent writer, so if that interests you, I'd recommend checking her out. And with that, the Barbie project was complete. I'd like to take some time to thank my current Patreons. It has been so fun sharing behind the scenes stuff with you guys, especially on this project. And thank you for 100k subscribers on YouTube. Holy cow, it's an honor, really. I really look forward to reaching more milestones here. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.